Welcome to the Managing the Smart Mind podcast with your host, Coach Kramer. This is episode 21, Procrastination, part the second. Hello, smart human. Welcome to part 2 of this series on procrastination. As I said in the last episode, it's complicated. That's why I'm taking some time, spreading it out over multiple episodes to actually unwind it and give you all the tools you need to tackle procrastination. Now, here's a quick recap of what we covered in the first part. We looked at what procrastination is, what actually happens when you procrastinate, when it becomes a problem, whether everyone procrastinates, why smart humans have a higher risk of procrastination, and how you can start overcoming it. And in this second part, I will take a look at 2 important procrastination triggers, thoughts and feelings. And then the third part, the next episode, will be dedicated to all the things you can change in your environment or in your behavior. And it is loaded with even more practical tricks and tips. But first, we look at feelings, the root cause of our procrastination. And the reason I want to tackle those first is because these are at the core of our procrastination. As I said before, I could give you 20 practical tips like, tie box, all the things. That is all very useful, but again, you're looking at the symptoms. And I love solving things at the root, right? Changing the cause. And last week, I gave you a little assignment. If you haven't listened to episode 20 yet, I strongly recommend that you do that first, because then this episode and the next will make much more sense. So, last episode, I asked you to start noticing how you procrastinate, to identify your favorite modes of procrastination, right? It can present so differently in different people. For me, this is actually very interesting because my studio always used to be a complete mess, but I have changed through coaching. I'll talk more about that in a different episode, into a person who isn't completely decluttered yet, but who loves everything to be organized. So now that's almost become a mode of procrastination for me. I love to go and tidy something rather than do the thing. So for me, doing a little decluttering, checking my inbox, just grabbing my phone, checking social media, making coffee, all those things to me are like a sign like, oh, I'm procrastinating, right? So I ask you to start noticing what that looks like for you, and then to become aware of the feelings that you're trying to avoid when you're indulging in procrastination. And if you did this exercise, you've probably learned and experienced that procrastination is actually a really successful strategy to avoid discomfort in the moment, right? Our brain notices that we're feeling something unpleasant, and it sets about fixing that. And it works, right? You feel, bored, you feel resistance to doing something, you make coffee instead. You feel fine. You feel so much better. Now, yes, it works, but it works at the cost of your longer term goals, like keeping a clean house, getting healthy, avoiding incurring late fees on payments, building a business, finding a partner, whatever your long-term goals are. So if you allow your brain to, quote unquote, help you avoid the work you need to do to achieve these goals, then you exchange short-term gain for long-term pain. That might actually just be a great tool to remember, right? Right now, I'm exchanging, if I'm procrastinating, exchanging short-term gain for long-term pain. Okay, let's look at these emotions our brain helps us avoid. Here is a little list. It's not comprehensive, but it will give you some idea. There's dread, just this like feeling of, oh, God, no. The feeling of incompetence. Like, I can't do this. I'm not good enough. Confusion. This usually shows up like, I have no idea where to start or how to approach this. There's overwhelm. Oh, it's too much. It's just too much. There's uncertainty. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know how to do it. I don't know whether it's even a good idea to do this, like all the doubt. There's insecurity about your capacity, about maybe other people, about the whole project. There's fear. Sometimes it's something really scary. Like, maybe you will need to reach out to people and you could be rejected. There's anxiety. Lots of things can cause anxiety as well that you want to procrastinate on. And there can be resistance. And for me, resistance shows up a lot in tasks that I find very stupid, boring, repetitive, right? I have so much resistance if I don't manage my mind. Now, note that all of these can be classified as negative, but many people, including myself, also sometimes want to avoid more positive emotions like excitement because they're somehow dysregulating. So sometimes I'm like, oh my God, why am I avoiding this? I actually like this, but then it excites me so much that it kind of, my brain is still like, no, let's not do it. It's too expensive, glucose wise. Let's just not go there. So it doesn't need to be negative, but most often it is. Okay. So we know that your brain uses procrastination as a kind of coping mechanism to avoid these emotions. Now, the next question, of course, is how do you fix that? And here's the simplest and at the same time the hardest solution. By allowing the feelings instead of trying to get away from them. Yeah, sorry. I always say I'm the bad news coach. I help people feel awful so they can have amazing lives. So how do you do that? How do you allow the feelings instead of trying to get away from them? Well, I have done an entire podcast on this before. It's episode 16. So check it out if you'd like more in-depth info on this. But here's the executive summary. First of all, you want to be prepared. Expect to feel sucky when you're doing something you don't really look forward to, right? When you're starting on a task that you're not going to necessarily want to do, expect to feel awful. Or when it's something you're dreading, right? Basically anything you're not like, oh my God, someone try and stop me. I want to do it now. If that's not happening, if you don't have a massive desire to get started, expect sucky feelings. And then when a sucky feeling comes up, when you feel that dread or overwhelm or incompetence or whatever it is, you can tell your brain, oh, of course I'm feeling this way. I expected to. Hey, brain, you don't need to fix it. You don't need to cause procrastination to fix this feeling. It's supposed to happen. See, that already helps in itself. Next step, do not move. Stay put. Stay where you are and allow the sucky feeling to move through you. You can even, if you want to, move towards it, kind of lean into it. If you have a martial arts background like me, it's actually very similar to moving towards the pain instead of away from it. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's incredibly effective. Also, know that if you've never done this before, it can be difficult. Every fiber of your being may scream, no, I don't want to feel like this. This is not good. Let's get away from it. And that's okay. Just notice it. Stay with the feeling for as long as you can manage. Feel the anxiety, the uncertainty, the fear, confusion, whatever it is, and get to work on your project. So this is both the hardest and the best thing. If you can actually get good at this, at sort of leaning into the sucky feelings, you can pretty much achieve anything you want in life. But not only is it uncomfortable, it also just takes practice, grit, determination. So don't give up if you don't succeed at staying with the feelings all the time. It's a process. And the more you practice, the better you actually get at it. Now, as I said before, feelings are our first prong of attack, but we need to look at more aspects if we want to battle procrastination. And those uncomfortable feelings that cause procrastination may actually be triggered or amplified by thoughts. And those thoughts play another important role in your procrastination patterns. As an example, let's look at some thoughts I have about unpacking the last 5 boxes still left unopened in our attic since we moved house more than 26 months ago. Here we go. Whatever is in there is not important. I don't want to go through that old stuff. I have no idea what to do with whatever is in there. I feel exhausted just thinking about it. It's not worth investing time and energy in. I have a million more interesting things to do. Now, just looking at that list and reading it makes me incredibly resistant to opening up the boxes. I mean, it's exhausting. It creates so many uncomfortable feelings that, yes, of course, those boxes are still up there. It makes sense if this is what I'm thinking that I'm not doing it. Here's another example. Let's say I want to write a book and I have thoughts like, I'll never get this done. I'm such a bad writer. I never finished the last book I started, which, by the way, is true in my case. I can't even sit still for long enough to write a chapter, let alone an entire book. I have nothing original to say. I don't have time to write. Now, as you probably noticed, this is not helping at all. I have basically talked myself out of writing a book. So if I keep believing these things, it's going to be very hard to get started, to start writing and to keep going. And sure, I could totally try and move through all the feelings these thoughts produce, as we talked about earlier. But that takes a lot of strength and energy. And we have limited supply, right? So in this case, I may want to start by changing the way I think about these projects. And I don't mean swapping your thoughts with perfectionist fantasies like, I am an amazing best-selling author. I have wonderful, unique, world-changing ideas all the time. Because then your smart mind will simply laugh at you very sarcastically. That shit doesn't work. I mean challenging those thoughts. Checking out whether they're even true, because often they aren't. And then slightly adjusting them into thoughts that you can actually still buy into, that you can believe, but that create way less resistance or energy loss. So for the book project, this could look like, instead of, I'll never get this done, I'm committed to keep going until this is done. Right? So notice it's not like I change it to, I am for sure getting this done. I'm totally getting this done. No, I am deciding to keep going until it is done, which feels so different, right? It feels like I'm in charge and it's not up to, the gods, the fates. I'm committed to keep going. And I'm such a bad writer. I could change into, I'm becoming a better writer with every paragraph I write. So I'm not even arguing with whether I'm a bad writer or not. Again, this is black and white thinking, right? Which I also covered in an earlier episode. I'm just looking at what I can do, right? I can write. And when I write, I get better at writing. I never finished the last book I started, which is true. Okay. I can think instead, I now have all the knowledge and tools I need to finish this book. I actually do believe that. I can't even sit still long enough, right, to finish a chapter. Now, again, I could change this to I can sit still long enough, or I can force myself to, or I can learn to sit still long enough. But instead, here I would go with sitting still isn't required to write a book, right? I mean, I could dictate chapters, whatever. Who says I need to sit still? And then I have nothing original to say. I would replace with, there are people out there who need my help. And I don't have time to write. I can easily carve out 45 minutes, 5 days a week to write, right? There we are. So again, notice that I don't just change these thoughts to their opposites. I don't replace, I I don't go to, I have only original things to say. That would be too much of a stretch, and my smart mind would just laugh at that. So instead of trying to replace I have nothing original to say with how amazingly clever I am, I just tap into my why. I go to my purpose. There are people out there who need my help. And then my whole thought about originality just becomes irrelevant, and it loses all its power. And the great news about doing this work for you with your smart mind is this is where you get to use your superpowers, right? You get to be creative, think of new things. So get to work. When you get stuck on a project, first uncover the thoughts that are causing you to procrastinate, and then get crafty at finding suitable replacements. Okay, but you don't even need to wait until you get stuck. Not all crappy thoughts are created equal. Some are just so universally crappy that you can work ahead to circumvent them. Hey, working ahead. I'm waving at all those people who, like me, love to get ahead of the class. So, we have standard saboteur thoughts. And here's a list of them. I think we all have these in our head from time to time. I don't know how to do this. I'm not ready to do this. It's too much or too big, etc. This is too hard, too difficult, too complicated. Or this is too boring, too dumb, too stupid. I think most thoughts that cause us to procrastinate actually boil down to one of these, which is good to know because it means any work you do on this then easily translate to all the other projects you procrastinate on. So let's try it. Think about a project or task you're currently procrastinating on. Are you thinking any of those standard saboteur thoughts above? And if so, how can you modify them to make it less difficult to get started and to keep going? Okay, here are some of my suggestions. Whenever I think, I don't know how to do this, I have no idea, I go to, I can figure this out. I have a brain and the internet, right? And when I think I'm not ready to do this, then I go to, depending on the circumstances, I'll go to, I'm as ready as I need to be, for example, right? Or I can start from where I am right now. I'm perfect right now. I know exactly enough, etc., etc. When I think it's too much, too big, and so on, I can just think, I am going to break this up into bite-sized chunks. And same for this is too hard, difficult, complicated. I can break this down and simplify it. And when I think this is too boring, dumb, stupid, ridiculous, then with some effort, I have to admit, I can go to, I'd rather spend my time just getting this done than thinking about how stupid it is, right? That's just smarter. Let's face it. And of course, feel free to craft your own. This really works best if you adjust the words until the new thought feels believable to you. You want it to be acceptable to your smart mind. And you want it to create a shift in your energy, in your body, kind of from a massive meh to at least a curious, maybe. Okay, that is quite enough for today. I don't want to create overwhelm that then causes you to procrastinate on overcoming your procrastination. Let's just do a quick recap. Procrastination is a coping mechanism to avoid sucky feelings. You can expect it and then move towards the feelings instead of away from them. Thoughts can actually amplify those sucky feelings that make you want to procrastinate. So the first step is to become aware of them. The second is to morph them into something that alleviates rather than reinforces your desire to procrastinate. And we have standard saboteur thoughts. We all have them, which makes them much easier to catch and circumvent. So give these strategies a try over the next week and let me know how it goes. And then get ready for the next episode in this series on procrastination, where we'll look at the third prong, changing things, not in your mind or body, but in the world to help you overcome procrastination. Until then, have the most amazing week. Bye-bye.